Hello friends, welcome to the lecture on handling of files in Perl. Today we are going to have a look about how we open a particular file in Perl, how we can add data to a file, how we can actually read data from a particular file in terms of reading the file. We'll go line by line as well as getting the data in terms of blocks from a particular file. Also, we will see how to close a file and there are many other operations which are related to file. So let's get started. In order to open a file, we have an inbuilt function that is open. Inside open, we have two values uh, passed to this particular function. One is the file descriptor and the other one is the name of the file. So in this case, just for an example, we'll use subroutine.pl as our file which we need to open. And file, this particular uh, you can say the word which is written in caps, that is file, is your file descriptor. This is very important. As you will see, this particular file descriptor will be used in order to read, write or do any other operation on the file, that is subroutine.pl. So you can have a very self-explanatory file descriptor. I have simply used file. You can have any other name, but make sure you are putting this in caps. Once this is done, what you will do is you can quickly go ahead and execute this particular program, and you will see there is no output associated with it as of now. Now what if I just misspell this file, that is subroutine.pl? Currently I don't have any such file in my directory, that is g colon perl example. So I have not got any error. So what we can do is we can simply do a check here whether the file opening was successful or not. So in this case we'll simply write die and we'll say cannot open file, and we'll see what exactly happens when we try to execute it now. So it says cannot open file. Why is that so? Because there is no such file. Now if you want to see the system generated message in this particular case, you'll simply say dollar exclamation. This has all the messages during the error. Whatever message gets logged, dollar exclamation will have it. So now if I execute this particular program, it says cannot open file. This is our own message that we had written with the die statement, and after that we had given dollar exclamation. So in dollar exclamation it says no such file or directory. So this means that the system generated a particular message when we tried to open a file, that is subroutine.pl, with a wrong name. Basically it says it cannot find that particular file, so there is no such file or directory. Now along with this, what is the exit code? So to get the exit code of the last command that we have executed, we use dollar exclamation. So remember these few things, these are very important things, and this will always be this particular line is basic syntax of how you open a file in Perl. So you use the open function along with a file descriptor and the name of the file. The name of the file can be either hard coded or a scalar variable can also be used to open that particular file. If we use a scalar variable, then the scalar variable will contain the name of the file. Along with this, in case the opening of the file fails, then we'll have a die statement. So this indicates an OR operator. So OR die, we can have our custom message along with, you can have the system message also and the error code, in case you want these particular two things to get printed also on your screen. Once this is done, probably I'll just simply correct the name of the file and we'll quickly again execute this particular code. So now you can see there is no such issues. So I'm sure now that the file has opened successfully. So now what we can do is, once the file has opened successfully, we'll read the file. So I'm just putting reading file line by line. So this is a very interesting thing. We can read file at once and we can read file line by line. So let us read file by going through each line. So what I'll do is I'll use a while loop. This while loop will go on till I have data in my file descriptor. Okay, and simply what I'll do is I'll go ahead and print each line. So just to understand that it is going line by line, what we'll do is we'll define a variable here $count. Okay, and dollar count will be equal to 0 here. So we'll have a variable my dollar count which is assigned a value of 0, and in this case what we'll do is we'll simply say print line of dollar count, that is line 0, line 1, so on and so forth, and we'll go ahead and print the line. Now as I said, in Perl we have a default descriptor, so dollar underscore has that particular line in this case. Now if we go ahead and execute this particular program, let's see what is the output that we get. So if you can see, we've got the entire file to be printed. So this was the file, this was the data that was contained in the file, and as you can see, it has printed spaces also, or you can say the blank lines along with the lines along with the content of that particular file. So now this is pretty much clear that it traverses the file line by line. When we use a while loop, and inside the while loop we use the file descriptor with this operator, that is open and close angular brackets. I hope this particular part of reading the file line by line is pretty much clear now. So the other way of reading the file is actually passing all the contents into an array variable. So how this can be done is simply use an array variable. Let's say my array variable is @file underscore data, and I'll simply pass the file descriptor, that is file. So what it does is it gives all the data to this particular list, this particular array variable that is present in the file descriptor. Now if we go ahead and say print dumper slash @file data, you can see the output that we'll get in this particular case, use data dumper. So let us go ahead and execute this particular program again. Now you can see there are multiple outputs which are pretty much the same. Oops, there's something that's gone wrong here. I'll quickly check what exactly has happened here. Okay. Okay. So what was so why we are getting output at once? Because in this particular case file, the entire data that was present in the file has been actually given to @file data. Now what we are trying to do is we are again trying to access this particular uh, file using the while loop line by line. So there is no data as such as of now, and that's the reason in this particular case no data has been printed. So what we'll do is we'll simply close the file here. By closing, we'll simply pass the file descriptor, and we have closed the file. Now we'll actually open the file again, simply doing this, and we'll again execute this particular piece of code. Now you can see there are multiple outputs. One is the data dumper output, where we have actually read the entire file, that is entire data set, into the array variable. So all the chunk or all the data that was present in the file has gone into the file data variable, that is @file underscore data variable. And in the second case we have gone through the file line by line. So if you can see here, we have traversed the entire file using the while statement and using the file descriptor. So I hope this part is pretty much clear of how we can read files by using a while statement, that is by using a while statement to read file line by line, and then using the array variable to get the entire chunk of data inside the array variable using the file descriptor. So each of these cases can be used as and when required according to the, you can say, the logic of your program. So make sure you know both of these, and these would be your ideal way of opening the file and then reading the data from that particular file. Let's go ahead and actually write some data to a particular file. So now what we'll do is we'll create a file and then we'll put some data into that particular file. So the syntax of opening a file or creating a file would remain same. Basically writing a file would remain same. So what we can do is I'll simply copy that particular statement. I'll change the name, let's say output.txt. We'll say cannot open file, dollar exclamation, dollar question mark. That would still remain the same. Now we need to write particular data into this particular file. So to write, we need to use this particular operator at the beginning of the name of that particular file. This is for write. Default, the file always opens in read mode. So in case of read mode, you don't need to specify any operator, but explicitly if you want to know which particular operator works out, this is the operator that works out for read mode. So this is the read mode operator and this is the write mode operator. So in this case, we are actually inserting data into output.txt. Now to actually put some data into this particular file, that is output.txt, it's pretty simple. We use the file descriptor just like in the previous case. So we'll say print, use the file descriptor and print what? So I want to print something like this is my first line. Okay. And we'll simply go ahead and execute this particular program. Now, how do we check whether output.txt was created in the first place and it also has the data that we had written inside that particular file. So what we'll do is, there are a couple of ways. We can do it through program also. We'll simply go to that particular folder and we'll see whether output.txt was created or not. So inside Perl example, if you see, this is the output.txt file, and when you open this particular file, you will see this is my first line. So the file has been created and we have successfully written the data into this particular file. So let's go ahead and write some more data. So we'll simply say this is my second line, this is my third line, and we'll again go ahead and execute this particular program. So we'll again go to our folder, we'll quickly open the document, and we have seen that we have got three lines. This is the first, second and third line. But if you remember, we had actually executed this particular program twice. So ideally we should have not lost the content in the previous occasion. So on the previous occasion there was one line, this is my first line, but again we executed it and we have got the same set of data, but we have lost the previous data that was there in the file. So why is that so? In this particular case, we have opened the file in the write mode. Now if I open the file in the append mode and we'll execute this particular piece of code again, you will see that we have actually retained the previous data as well as added new set of data. So remember friends, reading, if you just want to read a particular write a particular file, you can use a single arrow if you don't want to have the previous data to be saved. But if you want to keep the previous data and write some data to that particular file, use double arrows or the right shift operators to the name of the file. So in this case you are appending the data, in this case you are actually just writing the data. So this is part of how you actually write data to a file. So what we have covered today is basically how we open a file, how we check whether the open was successful, that is using the die command. Then we have seen how to close a particular file, how to open a file and read the contents of that particular file using two ways, that is reading the file line by line. Remember, these are standard things and you will always use them whenever you play with files. So if you want to if you actually work on, if you are working on a scenario where you need each line of data as it comes into a file, so you will this particular method. If you are okay to just get the entire chunk of data from the file and save it in the array variable, so use this particular way. So these both are pretty much simple and they do the same purpose, but the only thing is that this works more dynamically, that is it keeps on uh, going through the file till it finds data present in that particular file descriptor. Then how do we open a file for writing? This is how we open a file for writing. In this particular case we have appended the data, so we use double uh, or the right shift operators. There are two right shift operators. In case of writing a file, without appending the data, we use a single right shift operator. To write data we simply use the print statements, and what we do is we use the file descriptor followed by the print statement and simply write what data we want to put into the file. So we come to the end of this particular lecture of handling of files in Perl, and we'll look into more of the detailed handling of files in our next lecture. Till then, thank you.